I'm a pharmacist. I own 52 units of real estate and I help coach people to buy their first multifamily deal. So today I want to talk about the reality of financial freedom from real estate. So it's been a topic that's been fresh of mind for me because I'm pretty close to my financial freedom. I can smell it. It's within probably a year or two for me. Um, I mean, honestly, I can do it today, but I just want to do it in a smarter way, in a more reasonable way, and just really trying to set myself up for that transition out of my W 2 job. So, the reality of financial freedom from real estate. So, for me, what helped me build up my net worth was buying real estate on market, on Redfin, to be honest. And at the time, I didn't think I was getting a good deal. I just was paying market price on Redfin once again, and I just bought it, not over, not under, just at market. And from there, I just held onto the property long term and just rented it out. So I didn't do anything special, right? And obviously, back in 2017, homes were cheaper. But when I bought in 2017, I didn't know it would go up like crazy. Like fast forward today, the house I bought in 2017 for 800,000 is now worth 1.4 million dollars. So between principal pay down, between market appreciation, that property went up on average about $100,000 a year. So that increased my net worth by $100,000 a year. And I didn't do anything special, to be honest. I literally just bought it on market, rented it out, held on to it. And to be honest, the first property I bought with 10% down at a 4% interest rate, it was actually cash flow negative. It was cash flow negative. I think I was negative $500 a month. And keep in mind, I was self-managing the property, so I'm not paying a property manager. Keep in mind that I am, what is it? Not factoring capex. I'm not factoring vacancy. Luckily, I had very good, um, tenants that stayed there the whole time. Like I had the same tenant the whole time since 2019 when I rented it out. So it's been really nice in that aspect, right? Where the same tenant is paying down my loan. The same tenant, there's no vacancy, so I don't have to, you know, clean up the whole unit, touch up the whole unit, and then list it for rent, and it might be vacant for like 2 3 months, and at that point, it's going to cost me $4,000 a month, which ends up being 12,000. So all I did was I bought a property, 10% down at market price, and just held on to it and rented it out over time. Over time, the rents gradually increased. I think I started at 3,700, and then that was negative $500 a month in cash flow. And 2 years later, I raised the rent to 3,900. Then 2 years later, I raised the rent to 4,100. And during that window, I did a refinance to lower my interest rate from 4% to 3.125. So at that point, I essentially was able to like break even. And once again, this is breaking even with me self-managing the deal. So I did this multiple times, right? I did this with a second house hack. I bought 10% down. Once again, I bought a kind of a duplex in San Francisco, 10% down, 4% interest rate, or sorry, 3.75% interest rate. And I literally just bought it on market at asking price. And I put 10% down, no PMI. And I rent out the lower unit to four college students. The upper unit, I rented out 2 rooms, and I lived in the master bedroom. And I collected, I think, $5,400 a month. And once again, I literally just rented it. And then once I moved out of it, I rented out the upper unit to a Section 8 tenant and the lower unit to another tenant. And I'm getting about 8,000 bucks gross a month on this property. And from there, I literally was just like, okay, I'm actually cash flowing a little bit on this property. But keep in mind, I'm self managing the property. If there's any repairs or maintenance, like I had a water heater break just recently, I had to cover that cost, so I lost the cash flow, and I'm getting principal pay down. But once again, this property on average appreciate by about $80,000 a year. If you factor in the principal pay down, that's another, about $20,000 a year. So on average, now I got two properties where they're going up in value between principal pay down and market appreciation by $100,000 a year. So now that's $200,000 a year. Then I did that for a third property, same thing. Now it's going up by 3,000 or $300,000 per year. So that's kind of the power of like real estate and the power of long-term thinking, right? And like I said, I did nothing special. I literally just bought on market and rented it out to one tenant and didn't do anything else. I didn't do anything special. I didn't fix it up. It was turnkey. And now you fast forward, I have four of these properties where I just rented out. They're like breaking even slash cash flow negative, and I'm renting out to the same tenants because I treat the tenants well. I don't raise the rents that often, but I don't want to be too far below market rents. If they have an issue, then I respond timely because I don't want vacancy because vacancy is what kills the deal. So I want them to be there as long as possible so that I don't have to deal with vacancy. And it's inconvenient because I'm, in Los Angeles. My properties are in the Bay Area. So if I had to show the unit, then I have to like use my parents to go there to open the door to show the tenant. But I do a lot of the screening myself online or on the phone and through text message. So that's kind of like how I built a lot of my wealth. Like, to be honest, just doing that four times probably increased my net worth by like at least $2 million, I would say. And I did nothing special, like once again. And I know that the first instinct and first response is, well, how can I do that in 2025? Interest rates are higher. It's not, 3%, it's not 4%. And like, to be honest, you can still make it work today, but is your cash flow going to be worse? It's going to be worse, right? Like the current house I'm living in, I bought for $900,000. I actually put 5% down on this property. I got about 40,000 in builder credit from Lennar, which I used to, upgrade the flooring. I used it to cover the closing costs. I used it to pay for the solar panel. I used it to prepay HOA for a year. And on top of that, I got a kickback from my realtor because they didn't really have to do much. So, I got half their commission check back. So ended up, I put $45,000 down, but I ended up getting back around 15,000. So essentially, I put $30,000 down to buy this property. My interest rate 6.5%, and for me, once again, I just bought this on market, and I bought this phase four, and from here, it's just really buying and holding, right? So if I was at the earlier phase of my life, I would have rented out the two other rooms in my house. I would have probably bought a four-bedroom version of this house for about $1 million instead of 900. I would have rented out each room for at least $1,000 each, so that's $3,000 a month. If I were to use it as an Airbnb, so I can Airbnb each room, maybe I can juice up the returns to maybe, uh, let's say $1,500 a month times three. It's $4,500 a month, and my total all-in cost is 7,500. So if I got 7,500 in cost, $4,500 in rent, now my cost to live here is $3,000, which is still expensive, but hey, it's subsidizing the cost of my house, right? Like $3,000 a month is probably rent. So there is a way to do it. And then yes, my interest rate's high, but what happened was I bought new construction, and I bought it phase four. It's now in phase 12. And unfortunately right now, like the new phases aren't selling for that much more, but they finished building about 500 houses, and it's going to be 1,000 house community. So what's going to be crazy is right now, because there's overbuilding, like if I were to sell my house, I would probably sell it for less, because why would you buy my house that's new construction, a year old, when you can buy a brand new one that's currently being built? You can pick how you want your flooring, you can pick your backsplash, you can pick your layout, you can pick your finishes. So why would you buy mine? So I know I cannot sell for a while, but once this whole community's finished built, all 1,000 units are finished being built, they're all sold out. At that point, the value of this community is going to skyrocket significantly, right? And that's when I'll get massive appreciation on this property. So once again, it's a long-term game, right? So the key is staying in the game as long as possible. So you can do that by renting out some rooms so that it can cover some of your costs so you can save more money, right? It's inconvenient to live with tenants, but it's a way to make more money. So what I would do is I would just rent it out, and then hopefully interest rates go lower, right? I locked in a 6.5%, maybe in 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe it's less, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 4.5%, in which case I would do a refinance to lower my rate from 6.5 to 4%, save maybe, I don't know, $1,000 a month on that. And on top of that, I would remove my PMI, which is another $200 a month. So there you go. You just saved maybe $1,200 extra a month. And then if you're still renting out your rooms, maybe the rent on your rooms went up by a little bit. So now you're getting more money in, right? So you have to look at it like in at least 5-year increments, because I started to see my wealth really build up after 5 years of owning my rental properties that I bought on market. I did nothing special. Once again, I just bought it on market on Redfin and just made an offer at asking price and they accepted it. That's literally it. So this built up a lot of appreciation in my portfolio. Like I said, probably at least $2 million, I would say. And then once I built up this $2 million of appreciation, doing absolutely nothing, to be honest, besides buying it on market and holding it and renting it out and house hacking it. That's all I did. I was negative cash flow, which I could support through my W-2 job. So the importance of your W-2 job is very key, right? Is to support your negative cash flow. I just saw it as an investment in myself, a forced savings account to myself. But once I built up this, like, let's say $2 million of equity, I was able to do a cash out refinance where I pulled out about $1 million or $1.2 million tax free. So when you pull out a bunch of equity, not only did I lower my interest rate because it was during COVID, but now my debt is bigger. So now my cash flow on my properties is even lower. But I was able to do it just because I had a high income W 2. Once again, the power of your W 2 job. And then from there, I pulled out a bunch of money, 1.2 million to be exact, and I bought three commercial units, a 26 unit apartment complex, which I self-funded my down payment of 25%. I self-funded my renovation of $300,000, and I was able to renovate all the units, all 26 units. I was able to raise the rents from the average of 350 from the prior owner to an average of 700, which was still $50 under market. So because of that, I was able to rent out all my units fast because I was below market rents and my units were nice. So if I raised my rents from 350 to 700, I increased my net operating income by double. If you increase your net operating income by double, you doubled the value of the property. So now I bought it for 500,000 under market, put in 300, so I'm all in for 800, and now it's worth 1.5 to 1.6 million dollars. And I just got validation from a lender yesterday that they had it appraised at about 1.55 million as well. So it was reassuring to see that they agreed. So from there, in this strategy, I forced appreciation with commercial real estate, right? That's why I liked it. With my single family homes, I chalk it up to luck. Like I literally did nothing with my single family homes. I bought it, I rented it out, and it just appreciated $100,000 a year on average. That's luck, right? But with my commercial real estate, it was skill because I came in there, I bought it right, I negotiated great seller repair credit. I had a great property manager who referred me a great general contractor who fixed up my units in a very cost-effective way, $10,000 per unit on average. Very nice, very clean, very modern, very tenant-proof. And from there, I was able to raise the rent up to below market rent and execute that, right, over 2 to 3 years. And now it's really passive. It's really easy. So for me, it's just like, okay, like I had more control. So I basically forced $800,000 of appreciation on my commercial deal, which was my skill, my operation, right? So I kind of like that aspect of multifamily, but it can go the other way too. If I don't operate the multifamily well and my net operating income goes down, my rents go down, my expenses go up, my occupancy goes down, my NOI goes down, which the value goes down. So it can go both ways, right? If you're a good operator and you can manage your NOI, increase your NOI, you can increase value. If you're a bad operator, your NOI goes down, then your value goes down, right? So it goes both ways. But with single families, it's at the mercy of the market. If the market goes up, your property goes up. If the market goes down, your property goes down. It's just luck, right? And holding it long term. So, in the beginning of my financial freedom journey, it was just buying single family homes and letting the market do its thing, which chalk it up to luck. But at that point, I did a huge cash out refinance thanks to my W-2 job, thanks to my good credit score, thanks to my low debt to income ratio, and thanks to me living very humbly and frugally, to be honest. And then pulling that money to go buy apartments where I was able to renovate it, increase the rents, increase the value. I used the money to buy a mobile home park, which I lost money on, right? To being honest, I lost $100,000 on this deal, and I still have money trapped in the deal as a note. So, you don't win them all. And then I bought a 20 unit where I self funded once again with that same money. I did the down payment, I had the renovation costs through a hard money loan. So I was able to basically, renovate all those units as well, raise the rents, and then on average from about, I think 300 to 500. And then from there, I was able to do a cash out refinance, the BRRRR strategy, to pull out half my money. But I did that in 23 when interest rates were higher. I think the interest rate I locked in was 6.5%. So it's really in that deal. I think I bought it for 350. I put in 150, so I'm all in for half a million, and I think it's worth around $800,000 now. So that one wasn't as big of a home run deal compared to my 26 unit, but hey, I still forced a few hundred thousands of appreciation, and it does cash flow a little bit. So as you can see here, my total real estate portfolio is probably around $5.2 million of equity, and I have about $5 million of debt. And my cash flow is about, let's just be generous and say it's $8,000 to $10,000 a month. But for simple math, let's just say it's $10,000 a month. So every year I get $120,000 in positive cash flow, which is enough to replace my W-2. But if you take $120,000 cash flow, divide it by the $5 million equity, it's like a 2-3% return on my equity, which is low, right? That's very low if you look at it on a cash flow basis. But my portfolio is based on appreciation, right? Because appreciation is the fastest way to build up a large nest egg. Appreciation is the fastest way to build a rapid amount of wealth. That's the only way that I was able to build up a $6.4 million net worth within like 7 to 8 years of investing in real estate is through appreciation. I had market appreciation and I had forced appreciation, and I kind of used both of these tools, right? The cash flow for me is meant to sustain the real estate portfolio as long as possible. So I view cash flow as like defense. I don't live off the cash flow I never have, right? Like even today, if I get $10,000 a month in cash flow, I'm just saving that for a rainy day because I know that eventually there's going to be a plumbing issue in one of my apartments. There's going to be a new roof, which is going to cost $30,000. Maybe there's bed bugs. I have to spend $10,000. Maybe there's a hailstorm and a bunch of windows get broken and I have to spend $5,000. So realistically, I don't live off the cash flow today, right? Like, and that's the reality I want people to sink is in my entire real estate building journey, in the beginning, I was negative cash flow. So I was putting money out of my W-2 job to cover that cost in the beginning. But over time, rents went up. Over time, I was able to remove PMI because equity built up. Over time, I was able to lower my interest rate because interest rates dropped. And because of that, I was able to maybe break even or have a little bit of cash flow, not much, like 100, $200, which is essentially nothing. And I leveraged the fact that I had not much vacancy because I treat the tenants well and I have below market rents. I average about 5 to 10% below market on all my single family homes. So I'm not really aggressive with rent increases. For my apartments, they are the ones that cash flow, right? My 26 unit is the golden goose of my portfolio. This one cash flows about $8,000 a month, and it's the golden goose. My 20 unit breaks even or it can cash flow about maybe 1,500. So between my two apartments, I get, about almost 10,000. I have a note payment from my mobile home park that I sold at a loss. So that's another like 2,200. And that money is offset by the negative cash flow from my single family home portfolio. So I think I'm like negative 2 or 3,000 on my single family home portfolio. But just recently I raised rents a little bit on my single family home portfolio. So collectively I am positive cash flow. But once again, that positive cash flow that I'm talking about is just really for reserve for a rainy day. That's all it is. Like I don't live off of it. I've never touched it. I just save it for another day, right? And expenses always happen. Like I get a insurance inspection and they want me to do $5,000 worth of repairs, or I have a plumbing issue and now I have to do a repair. So for me, that cash flow is just to hold that property long term and not live off of it. So that's the reality of financial freedom from real estate. It's not most of your money is not made from the cash flow. Most of your money is made from the appreciation and holding onto it as long as possible, right? So now this gets me to my next point. So equity doesn't pay the bills today. Equity doesn't make my life better today. So that's why, being honest, if you follow my journey, as I built up a $6.4 million net worth, I still feel poor and I still feel broke because I'm the definition of asset rich, cash poor, right? Like I will not improve my lifestyle until I sell one of my properties, pay the capital gains tax, pay the depreciation recapture, and basically take that money and then maybe pay off my primary residence, and now I have no mortgage, right? Once I have no mortgage, that saves me 5,500 bucks a month. At that point, I can maybe go down to part-time as a pharmacist, right? And if I want to retire completely, I would sell another property that's maybe breaking even or cash flow negative, pay the capital gains tax, pay the depreciation recapture, and then just sit on that lump sum of money and invest it in like an index fund, which is like more liquid, right? And live off the dividends of that, or invest in like treasury bills, do T-bill ladders. So if I really want to like retire and enjoy my wealth, I have to sell two of my assets, to be honest, right? Like the cash flow, yes, I do cash flow 8,000 to $10,000 a month, but it's so volatile, right? Compared to a W-2 job. Like if I cash flow on average 8,000 bucks a month, at best, I would be comfortable living off 25% of that, which is 2,000 bucks a month, right? The rest, the 6,000, I'm just saving that for a major expense that will happen. Not when, it's just when it will happen, right? Not if, it will happen. So that's really the cash flow. If I were to take that $10,000 or $8,000 in cash flow and just like go buy nice things, when a major expense happens, now I'm coming out of my pocket to pay for it, and that's stressful, right? So that's the reality of real estate. Like you make 80% of your wealth through appreciation. The rest is the cash flow is just kind of like the cherry on top, a little bit playing defense, right? So why I'm sharing this is because I know a lot of investors, they buy these homes for $80,000, right? In the Midwest, some are super cheap, and then they could rent it out for $1,200, and that's above the 1% rule. But fast forward 10 years later, that $80,000 home might be worth $100,000, but that's only $20,000 of equity, right? Yes, you may have cash flowed like 500 bucks a month, but when you go sell it, or in 10 years, it only went up by 20K. If you have to replace the roof, that costs 30,000. It just wipes out your cash flow, right? Versus the single family homes I have in California, they appreciate an average $100,000 a year, right? And I'm seeing this too with my Huntsville, Alabama single family home. I bought it in 2021 for like 260. I rented out for 2,000. I locked in a 3.5% interest rate. It cash flows 500 bucks a month on average, but it appreciated to about $300,000. So that's $40,000 over what, 4 years, and I made 6,000 bucks, a year on cash flow. So it only appreciated by about, let's just call it, um, what is that, like $70,000. My single family home does that in one time, right? So that's really kind of the reality of retiring with real estate, right? Like you really have to focus on appreciation in conjunction with a W-2 job, in conjunction with your 1099 business. And then once you built up that equity, once you built up that net worth, once you built up those assets, at that point, you can cash out your assets, sell a property, sell two properties, and use that to go buy more, just to pay off debt, to invest in index funds, and to have more liquidity. That's how the game works, right? So you won't get rich from these like cheap homes. So that's really how the game is played. And the reality of financial freedom from real estate, it's really in the appreciation, where you're going to make 80% of your wealth. The cash flow is going to be 20%. So it's the 80-20% rule. I made 80%. I'd probably say 90% of my wealth is from appreciation. 10% is from the cash flow. And the cash flow is only just recent for me. Like I've been doing this for 7 years, and only recently have I started to get cash flow, because when you're renovating apartments, whatever cash flow you make, you're pumping back to fix the units. And it takes a while to do all that, right? So that's the reality of having financial freedom from real estate. Sorry, someone's calling me. It's distracting. Um, so I just kind of want to share that because I wish someone told me that, right? Like I thought I was doing it wrong because people were telling me, "Hey, Steven, you have $5 million of equity. Why is your cash flow so low?" So I feel like I was doing something wrong. But my appreciation, my principal pay down is insane. Like, yes, my loan payment is 6,000 bucks a month, but out of that 6,000, 2,000 goes to principal pay down, and 4,000 goes to interest. So on an annual basis, 2,000 times 12, that's 25K of principal pay down every single year. Times that by 6 years, that's $150,000 of tax-free money of principal pay down of forced savings that I've never seen, right? And at this point, let's just say, okay, I worked a W-2, I built up a $6 million nest egg. Now the question is, okay, I want to retire. Like, what would I do? And these are the exact moves I would do. Number one, I would sell one of my single family homes that are break even and pay off my primary residence. Boom. I just wiped out my mortgage of 5,500 bucks a month. That's one paycheck for me, right? So now I can comfortably be part-time if I want to. If I want to take it to the next level and not even be part-time, I could sell another property and then use that money to have as reserves in treasury bills, index funds, something liquid, right? Or if I have enough of an index fund portfolio already and I want to just be like, okay, I want more cash flow, I would 1031 exchange one of my properties in California and then buy something in a cash flow market like Huntsville, Alabama, like Oklahoma. Maybe I'll buy another apartment complex. Maybe I can take my sell a property for, let's say, $1.5 million. Maybe I have $600,000 of equity in there. I can 1031 exchange that and I can buy a bunch of new build construction in Huntsville, Alabama for 250K each. So I'd be buying, what is that? Six of them and putting on average 100K down each, right? So if I'm buying six properties at 250K and putting 100K down each, that's a pretty decent large down payment, right? That's almost like 50%. So these are going to cash flow better, right? And if they rent out for 2,000 bucks each, now I'm getting 2,000 times six, which is $12,000 in gross income. And then, minus 10% for your property management. And then whatever your loan is, property tax, insurance, HOA, and that's your cash flow. That's how I can increase my cash flow. But I'm trading appreciation of San Francisco for the cash flow of Huntsville, Alabama, because the appreciation is less there. But at that point, I want more cash flow so I can retire, right? Or I just get a 1031 exchange and take the money, pay the capital gains tax, pay depreciation recapture, and buy a bunch of houses in Huntsville, Alabama cash, right? If I have $600,000 in equity, I can buy two houses cash and rent it out for 2,000 each, right? So at that point, you start pivoting. Yes, it's not the best financial decision, but when you're in the phase of harvesting your equity, your hard work, it's not about your return on investment. It's about your return on happiness. It's about your return on lifestyle. So that's kind of like how I'm planning it, right? So like to summarize all this, I'd have to sell two single family homes. One would to pay off my primary, or I can sell my primary and move into one of my homes that I bought a long time ago, or I would have to just basically sell the other one as well and 1031 exchange it, or just sell it just to have a bunch of cash, right? So I'm like breaking my piggy banks of my single family homes and then cashing in that equity, right? Because like I said, equity doesn't pay the bills, doesn't improve your lifestyle until you sell it, until you break it open, until you have access to it, right? Until you have that liquidity. That's what I mean by I'm extreme example of asset rich, cash poor. And I have to sell two properties to become, medium asset rich and then have more cash on hand. Or I could do a cash out refinance on my apartment, strip out all my equity, um, reduce my cash flow, right? Like I could pull $800,000 of equity after paying off the debt. And if I did that, it would wipe out my cash flow on my 26 unit. It'd go from 8,000 to like maybe 2,000 or 1,000. And, I can have $800,000, do whatever I want, right? And what I kind of thought about last night was, I don't have kids yet, but I may be in a situation where I have two kids that want nothing to do with real estate, right? They want nothing to do with real estate. So if that's the case, like I'm gonna have to start selling properties, right? I'd probably just keep two properties that I'd own free and clear eventually, and then each kid gets a paid off house, and then each kid, I have two whole life insurance policies, so each kid gets a paid off house, each kid gets a whole life insurance policy. That's a million plus, and whatever's left over, I just can sell it and then take the money and just do whatever I want, right? This is kind of the die of zero concept. So, for me, that's something that kind of hit, right? That's what kind of hit with me is like, wow, like, why not enjoy my life today and stop kicking the can down the road, right? Like today, what would improve my life today is paying off my mortgage and then stepping down to part-time or, or you know, paying off my mortgage and then just leaving pharmacy altogether. That would improve my lifestyle the most today, right? And then whatever free time I have, I can travel. I can spend time with my future kids. I can do whatever I want when I want and not have to report to a boss. Like I'll be honest, I go to my W-2 every day I come back, I feel so drained. It feels very soul sucking, but I know I have to do it because I'm asset rich, cash poor, right? But the moment I sell a property, I can have a large influx of cash. So that's kind of the reality of financial freedom from real estate. So let me take a look at the questions now. Sorry for my long rant. So once from Andrew Paulo, once you have reserves built up, well, you can just set aside about 15 to 20% of your cash flow each year and count most of the cash flow as true income. This took us a few years to accomplish. So yeah, for me, if I were to take the leap of faith and leave my W-2 job, like for me, I want at least $150,000 in the bank. I don't know why it's $150,000. I've just been my comfort level. That's probably going to be over a year of reserves, but because I know like replacing a roof is gonna be $30,000, right? Like, so I just want to pay that and not be stressed about it. Um, but it's really to your point, yeah, maybe it's gonna be about 20, 25% of my cash flow. It's gonna be set aside as reserves. So if I average $10,000 a month, then maybe I'll set aside 200, 2,500, and then 7,500 I can just live off of, right? But for me, I want to take my expenses as low as possible. And my biggest expense right now is our mortgage, right? Mortgage is my biggest expense. And honestly, once I have kids, the second biggest expense is probably daycare. But if I'm part time, if my wife is going to be part time, then maybe we don't have to pay for like daycare unless we just want to get away from the kids, right? Which may be an option. So so yeah, I mean, I don't know until I experience it, but like right now, I just treat my real estate income as non-existent. Like I don't even think I have it, right? I literally purely live off of my W-2 income, and even then, I reinvest a lot of my money. So like I'm believe it or not, my living expense outside of my mortgage, which is 3,700 bucks a month for me and Christine, um, I probably live off like 1,000 to 1,500 bucks a month still, despite being worth multiple millions, right? And I've kept it the same my whole life. Like I've never really inflated it since 2013, believe it or not. So about 12 years, I've kept my lifestyle exactly the same. Um, and then another comment by Andrew. It sounds like you'd actually have to sell two of your single family rentals to pay off your mortgage on your townhome, but I would do it. You're paying 50K annually just in interest on that mortgage. So yeah, like my monthly cost for my mortgage is 5,500 bucks a month. And what's the most discouraging thing is when you open up your statement, you'll see how much is allocated towards interest and how much is allocated towards principal. And in the beginning, like literally, I think out of 5,500, like 1,000 or less than 1,000 is principal pay down, and then the 4,500 is to pay to interest. And if you live in California, you're limited to I think $10,000 in terms of like your write-offs for owning a primary residence. And just my property tax alone is over 10,000, right? So I don't really get to write off the interest that much. So for me, just paying off the interest, and ironically, my primary residence here, it's the interest rate 6.5%. So in a weird way, if you pay off your property, that's 6.5%. You're locking in a 6.5% return on your money, which is close to the S&P 500, which averages 7 to 8%. So it's a move I would probably gonna do. And like I said, once I pay off my primary, I'm probably gonna pull a HELOC on it so that I have quick access to capital, so that in case I find a good deal, I can finance some of the renovations using a HELOC. Or if I find a really good deal, like a lot of times when you buy new construction in Huntsville, Alabama, if you pay quote unquote cash, which is just my HELOC, at that point, it just would cover the cost, right? I can negotiate a discount. So let's just say it's 250 listed, and I say, hey, I'm gonna pay cash with my HELOC, and I can negotiate. Okay, give me a price discount to 220K. So basically, I buy at 220K, I rent it out to a tenant, for maybe 6 months to a year, and then I do the burst strategy where I eventually do a cash out refinance on that property after a year, after it's been in rent, and then I take the money, pay off the HELOC, and then I have a new loan on that property, right? So that's something that I've been thinking about doing because I can buy these at a discount. And the HELOC depends what interest rates are, but it's usually a variable interest rate. But something that I thought of doing where I could use my HELOC on my primary to fix and flip homes or to like buy homes cash to basically fix them up, do the burst strategy or buy new construction cash to get it at a discount because builders will give you a discount if you can close fast, especially at the end of the year, because they're just so desperate to get rid of their inventory. So you can make a decent amount of money doing that, right? So you can buy it with instant equity day one. Um, but kind of a side tangent to this, talking about new construction. So it's interesting, like in like Huntsville, Alabama, in Austin, Texas, they're overbuilding right now. And what's happening is, let's just say I bought my home like 3 years ago for 250K, and Zillow will say it's worth 270K. So on paper, you have 20K of equity. But what's happening is the new construction is selling for like 240K. So what makes you stuck is if you're trying to sell your home, maybe due to a situation, there's a divorce, there's a death, you want to move, you got laid off. Now you're listing your home that you bought 3 years ago, um, um, to try to break even. But let's say you're listing it at like 260, 270, because after all your realtor fees and closing costs, that'll be break even for you. But what's happening is, why would a new buyer want to buy your home for like $10,000 more when there's a new construction down the street that they can buy, pick their furnishing, pick their backsplash, pick everything, and then get all these builder incentives. So if you're buying in a market where there's overbuilding of new construction, like Austin, Texas, Huntsville, Alabama, be prepared to hold that for at least 10 years and wait for the building to be done. Because while the building is there, the builders will offer steep discounts on deals, right? And like I said, why would people want to buy your home when you can buy something new construction and pick it? So that's something that I didn't realize of new construction. That's the downside of new construction, I would say. But the positive is if you're willing to hold this long term, and then once they're done building, at that point, it's going to appreciate like crazy because you're going to have a nice house. So, for me, if I buy in Huntsville, Alabama, or a market where there's a lot of new construction, be prepared to hold it for at least 10 years. And hopefully interest rates will go down, and hopefully you can rent it out and, at least break even on that property, right? So you really have to think long term with real estate. And like I said, time flies. Like I remember not too long ago, I bought my first property, and fast forward 7, 8 years, I'm like, wow, like it's crazy how much real estate you can buy in this time window. And I never raised capital. I work a W-2 job, right? I did this while working full time the whole time. I got laid off like twice during this journey. Videos talking about it. And I think when I got laid off, that's when it really eye opened to me to like, wow, you need additional sources of income. Like you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, which is your W-2 job, right? And I'm a high income W-2, so it's hard. Like it's gonna be hard for me to step away from my W-2. I'll be honest, because I'm just so used to getting like a paycheck every 2 weeks. I'm used to PTO. I'm used to sick leave. I'm used to like subsidized healthcare and all that. And then, but like I said, it's a slow, stepwise progress towards financial freedom. So it's going down to part time, right? Or I can maybe go to full time on site. Maybe I can find a pharmacist job that's remote. And then from there, I can go to like part time. And then from there, I can go to like per diem, where I just work at my leisure, right? But the key thing I want is, why I don't mind being part time is because if I just find like a nice cheap flight to go to Japan, I just want to go, right? I don't want to be bound by like an obligation of a job. So that's kind of my ultimate end game, and that's kind of my rich lifestyle. So that's the whole reason why I did real estate. And to add another point to this is, I had to like rewire my mindset over the past 2 years, because in the beginning I was just so focused on scaling, like leverage, debt, scale real estate, leverage debt, scale real estate, do low down payments, do cash out refinance, get HELOCs, get lines of credits, leverage, 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 right? So I did that to build my wealth. But now that I've built my wealth, I don't want to do that again, because I know leverage is a double-edged sword. I can lose money, right? I can lose money just as fast as I made the money. So now that I'm in a different phase, I'm going to take it more conservative. I'm going to do larger down payments. I'm going to do less leverage. I'm going to take some debt off the table. So it's a different game once you've built up your nest egg and you want to preserve that nest egg. So I'm rewiring the way I'm thinking, because I'm so tempted. Like literally yesterday, I was quoted. I can pull out about $1.1 million on my 26 unit apartment complex, and after paying off the loan, I have about $700,000 that I can pull out tax free, and that's all my down payment, all my renovation costs, plus an additional $300,000 on top. And that's crazy to me, right? But if I did that, I could use the $700,000 to go buy another property, right? I can buy another like 50 unit apartment complex and double my portfolio. But I had to hold myself back. So I was like, well, if I did a huge cash out refinance on the one property that cash flows the most, I'd wipe out my cash flow. I'd be back to no cash flow, and then I'd buy another property that's going to take me 2, 3 years to stabilize, right? So I'm going to set myself back from retirement another 2, 3 years. So because of that, I'm like trying to hold myself back, like don't do it. right? Don't do it. Like it's not gonna make you happier. Just stabilize what you have. Maybe sell some to take some debt off the table. So it's a different mindset. Like once you built the nest egg versus building the nest egg. So that's the part that I'm like trying to transition to. Because if you watch a lot of content out there, they just tell you how to scale fast, right? Y'all seen the Bigger Pockets episode of like some 21-year-old who scaled to like 100 units, right? And then it kind of makes you feel bad because maybe you're older than that and then you own less units, right? I've been there. Um, but they never talk about like, oh, like how do you stabilize it? And most of the people who like are financially free from real estate, if you look at them, most of them are like in their 40s, right? They start in their upper 20s. Like I start at 27 and they're in their like 40s at this point. So they've been doing it for what is that, 13 years at least, right? And then by the time I'm 40, it's gonna be 13 years for me. And at that point, my debt will be paid down, my rents will go up. Hopefully, there's appreciation. My rents will go up in my apartments, which will then increase the value over time. So that's really the long-term game, right? So if get rich quick in real estate, you can get rich quick from real estate, but your definition of quick must be like 10 years plus, right? You can fix and flip homes and make quick cash, right? But you're gonna pay taxes on it. You can wholesale homes, make quick cash. But if you want that real wealth to be able to retire and not be stuck to another job, then you have to own that real estate long term. So that's just kind of a realization that I've had, recently, and it was kind of weird because like, what made short-term rentals so sexy and appealing, I never got into it, was you got people got crazy cash flow, right? I knew a guy, he owned like three short-term rentals in like Sedona, Arizona, and he averaged like $20,000 a month, but his properties didn't really appreciate as much, right? So he gets a lot of cash today, but it's a very active business. And I don't want to be in the business of managing short-term rentals and coordinating cleaners. And yes, you can get systems, but overall, short-term rentals is way more active than long-term rentals. It's more active, but you can have higher returns. But I would hope so because it's more active, right? But do you know many people who own 40, 50 short-term rentals? It's hard to scale, right? Versus how many people do you know own 40 to 50 long-term rentals? It's scalable. I could double my portfolio and my time commitment wouldn't be that much more. So that's kind of really another option, right? So a lot of people, they do short-term rentals to get a lot of cash flow to leave their W-2 job. But after they leave their W-2 job, you have to like pivot into another business. And then eventually you want to get rid of your short-term rentals because it just takes up so much time, right? If you look at a lot of the big short-term rental people, it's like the Rob guy from Bigger Pockets. Like, you know, he's trying to trim down his portfolio of short-term rentals because it's not scalable and he's probably making more money from his business. So short-term rentals is a great way if you want fast cash to leave your W-2 job. But if you're okay with your W-2 job, then long-term rentals is the way to go to like build that slow and steady wealth over time. So it's that tortoise versus the hare mentality. So anyways, those are kind of my closing thoughts. Hopefully you found some value um, about financial freedom from real estate. Oh, wait, I see a question here real quick. You might want to consider selling the multifamily that only cash flows 2,000 bucks a month or whatever it is, and using that money to pay off the one that's cash flowing 8K per month if you want to retire, as well as paying off your townhouse. Yes, Andrew, actually, that's exactly what my thought was. Like, so it's funny when you build a real estate portfolio, there's always like one or two properties that you would sell, right? No matter how much you love your portfolio, there's always one or two you would sell. And it's so funny. Like my 20 unit, if I had to pick between my 26 unit and my 20 unit, I would sell my 20 unit in a heartbeat, right? Because my 26 unit is the golden goose. It's cash flowing 8K a month. And the loans on both are like the same. I have about $350,000 of debt on each of them. So literally, I could sell my 20 unit, which grosses 10K a month. On average, it might cash flow, let's just call it 1,500. So it's not amazing, but I could sell that for maybe 800, and then after taxes and depreciation recapture, maybe I can pocket maybe close to 300, and then I could use that to pay off my 26 unit. And what's nice about that is commercial loans, remember, have a balloon payment every 10 years. So if I pay it off, I don't have to worry about a balloon payment every 10 years, right? And then also by paying off that mortgage, I mean, I locked in a 4.25% interest rate, but if I paid off my mortgage, that would essentially increase my cash flow on that property by 2,000 bucks a month because my mortgage is 2,000 bucks a month. So now I'm going to cash flow 10,000 bucks a month on that property. right? And I could sell another property and pay off my primary residence. So I would basically sell 21 units in my portfolio. So I'd go from 52 down to 31. But in that 31 unit portfolio, what does it have? That has a paid off apartment complex, that has a paid off primary residence, and I still have a bunch of other single family homes that I could sell as well and trade up to, sell that and buy more houses tax, own it free and clear, right? So like imagine that foundation. Imagine like you own a real estate portfolio that's like minimally leveraged, right? Like nothing can happen to you. Even if you're vacant, you're not as stressed. So, that's the moves I will make if I want to retire or if I just don't, want my 20 unit anymore. And that's the nice thing about owning real estate long term. It's just like imagine your real estate portfolio is like a rose bush. Like you have to sometimes trim some branches to help it grow later. So maybe trimming the branches might be selling my 20 unit. Yes, I'm going down in units, but it's going to make my 26 unit portfolio way stronger. And then from there, once I get that more cash flow and that accumulates over time, maybe I can save for enough money to buy another property, right? So you really have to constantly assess which one would you buy, which one would you sell, and how is it performing over the long term. So that's always like the moves I have in my back pocket. So that's what asset management is called, right? Like you want to manage your assets and see how you want to pivot. Um, and you know, to Andrew's point, like the single family homes in California, they cash flow well. I mean, they appreciate very well, and long term, it's going to go up in value. So, and yeah, the single family homes I own are low maintenance, but I do self manage it, so it's a little bit more work on my end. Like, but maybe I can afford once rents go up over time, maybe I can afford a property manager and not have to deal with it anymore, right? So that's kind of like my mindset. Like you got to trim your portfolio over time and really reassess what works for you. So if I'm going towards retirement, it's taking debt off the table, right? Like me literally selling a single family home, the first one I bought, I would basically wipe out $600,000 of debt by selling that deal. And then if I paid off this property, that wipes off another $800,000 of debt. That's $1.4 million of debt wiped off the table, right? So now I'm less leveraged. And now I can comfortably increase my cash flow and lower my expense. So it's really crazy to think about that, right? And that's what's frustrating with me right now too, is like I feel a little bit stagnant because like I can make all these moves, right? But then there's a part of me holding me back. It's like, oh, I don't want to leave my W two, and it might be fear based because I know if I leave my W two, especially pharmacy management, it's hard to find another job. But I could be a regular pharmacist, right? That's no problem. But if I want to be in management, which is Monday through Friday, comes a headache too. But like if I want the stable job, then that's how you have to play it. So but maybe that's a part of my identity that's holding me back. I kind of feel like it's just holding me back, to be honest. But it is what it is. It's paying the bills today, so I can't hate on it. So, anyways, hopefully, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for engaging. Just wanted to share the reality of financial freedom from real estate. If there's other topics you want me to talk about, let me know. If you like these live streams, let me know. Something new that I've been trying. If you like it, let me know. Otherwise, I won't do them as often. It's fine. But please like, comment, subscribe. If you want to uh, get mentorship and coaching, take that link down below. If you want some guidance to buy your first multifamily deal, because one deal is all it takes to really change your financial freedom, change your financial outlook, and really set yourself up for a nice life to retire in your 40s potentially if you start in your late 20s to early 30s. Anyways, have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much.